side of it before we're at. Good afternoon. This is the City Charter Commission. It is April 24th. It is 5:30 p.m. And we are about to begin the first Charter Commission of 2018. What I'd like to do first is welcome everybody and maybe do introductions. So if we can go down around the corner and see who everybody is. So can we start with our first individual and say who you are? We'll go right down around.
I'm John Brownfield.
Okay.
Bill Swan.
Mike Wise.
Sue Kimmel.
Dwayne Hansel.
Les Schultz.
Roger Hippert.
Dave Christian.
Linda Heine.
Rick Jensen.
Once again, welcome for everybody, and thank you all for participating in this commission project. So what we need to do first is elect some officers so we know who's going to run the meetings. So I would entertain, first of all, some nominations for a chair for this commission. So do we have some nominations for the chair?
I would nominate Les Schultz for chair.
Why did I know that was going to happen?
Oh, you've
Second.
got the mic.
We have a nomination and a second for Les Schultz as chair. Any other nominations? Please. Oh. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I'll accept a motion to close the nominations.
So moved.
So we have a motion, any other, we don't have a discussion on this. All those in favor of Les Schultz as chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nomination for vice chair.
I would nominate Rick Jensen.
We have a nomination for Rick Jensen. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a nomination and a second from Linda Heine. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations closed. All those in favor for Rick Jensen as our vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Now we need a motion for secretary to approve the minutes. Anybody who would like that position? And just look for someone who looks up for a second. Eye contact. Eye contact. I saw Mr. Wise look up.
I'll make a motion for Mike Wise.
I have a motion for Mr. Wise. Any second?
Second.
That was a quick second, very quick second. So we have a motion and a second for Mike Wise. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations closed. All those in favor for Mike Wise as secretary, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to call to order. Let's set the quorum requirement. Let's have our counselor kind of walk us through some rules here. Can we turn it over to you for a little bit?
Sure. I think to the extent that we need to have some rules, you could simply adopt Robert's Rules of Order, the most current version, so that you at least have, if there'd be any disagreement about how we're going to proceed, you'd have that covered. As far as a quorum, if you want to go with at least 5, then you'll always have a majority. If you want more than that, that's your call. But I think, maybe we could take those one at a time, and then we should talk about, the kind of the schedule and what works for people in light of the fact that maybe you don't want to do these after PUC meetings, but we'll see. So anyway, my suggestion would be, why don't we first set the quorum? So whatever, your preference would be on that.
People okay with a 5-person quorum to make a decision? Problem is, if not 5 are here, we have to cancel the meeting and reschedule it. And so, but I think with a group of 9, we should be okay. Someone want to offer that motion?
I'll move that the quorum be set for 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm fine with Robert's rules, and no group really follows Robert's rules exactly because it's so tight if you really ever read it. And, even our city council doesn't follow Robert's rules exactly, but I think if we follow the basic rules of Robert's, set rules, we're fine. So if someone want to offer that motion?
So moved.
Move that. Second?
Second.
A motion and a second to follow Robert's rules for the basic premise of running our meetings. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Other,
I guess if we want to, we could talk about future meetings. We, through the staff at Brian's office, if everybody's on email, we could either, it's your call. If you'd like to kind of pick a day of the week, a time of the day that you think is going to work for most of you, as long as everyone is here. If folks are working and if you got a commitment and you just cannot get away until 5, we should talk about that.
do you have an idea like how often we should be meeting? Because I know some
Well-
things, like last time, we would go through stuff, but then we had to hand
Sure.
it off to you, and you had to research it. So
Right.
then sometimes it was 2-3 weeks
Right.
before we'd meet again.
Well, I think, and again, I wasn't involved with talking to Brian. Looking at Susan's file, it looked like there were only 3 or 4 meetings.
It wasn't a
And
lot.
they may have been like a month apart.
Yep.
I mean, this is not like we're going to be doing this every
Right,
week.
right.
Well,
So-
it kind of depends on what we're doing. I mean, at that time, there were a few issues that had been raised that the commission was sort of got together
Right.
to work on. So is there something that is there a reason that this was restarted here? Is there some particular
There
project we want
there
to
are
focus on?
2 things. I mean, you've got a list of some really kind of, typographical, technical things. At this point, the 2 things that I'm aware of, one has to do with the city is working on a blight ordinance, a nuisance ordinance, and under state statutes and how they've been interpreted by the appellate courts, the city has the ability through its charter to assess the costs back on the property owner at fault. And you're actually allowed a pretty wide open, scope to do that if it's in the charter. We don't have anything in our charter that deals with that. There's a state statute that talks about it, but then there's a whole bunch of specific procedures we have to go through. So, along with the lines of the city generally trying to clean places up and having something that they can use to enforce that, where the taxpayers aren't eating the cost, you could at least try and assess it back. That's going to be part of it. I don't have anything I'm going to present you tonight with any definite language on that. The other thing is for the relief of the city council. Right now, any new ordinances are supposed to be read into the record twice. And the city council can waive the second reading. But if Dave Schnobrick puts together a 20-page zoning ordinance, I'm supposed to be reading that entire ordinance into the record, which is not a huge thing unless you're on the council or you have to go through that. So we're going to have some alternatives for doing that. And beyond it, then the question is, well, what else do we need to do to? My understanding from the,
There's one third one, and that was we changed how we select
Oh.
the fire chief. So the charter has a process, and it could be construed to be the same process we use, but we want to clean that up.
Sure.
So that the fire chief isn't a popularity contest. It's actually based much like a police chief. It's based on ability, skills, merit, and all
no,
that.
and I mean, it's more than just, dotting i's and crossing
Yeah.
t's and finding periods that are missing. No, there are several other items.
Those are the 3 big ones.
Right, but this is not, I think, as I understand it again, the last Charter Commission actually took like pages 1 through 40 and went through them, not word by word, but just, went through it, took an hour, hour and a half, then they took the next block of pages, and then they finished up. So they did pretty much go through the entire charter. I don't think we see the need to do that. If any one of you would have questions, or if you had something, or people are approaching you thinking that there's something that should be changed, that's why we're meeting. We can certainly do it. But I think the intention would be probably at our next meeting to focus in on the specific things that we have, to get you in advance of that meeting some suggested language. at least let you know what the scope of this is. And then we might have another meeting, we might not. But ultimately, where is this all going? By way of background, the charter for the city of New Ulm is kind of like for the federal government and the state, the Constitution. Our city code that's our ordinances, that's our statutes. Those are changed fairly often, gets into the nuts and bolts, day-to-day kind of things. But the charter is the master document that creates New Ulm, and that has the general outlines on how this town operates, how our government operates. So it's a very important document. It's something that shouldn't be changed just at somebody's whim, but there's certainly reasons to change it from time to time. So we're not looking at revamping everything. We're not, going to come up with dozens of pages of language we think you should be, changing. But ultimately, this commission is not the one that decides on the change. You will make a recommendation to the New Ulm City Council about, after considering all this and discussing it, what your recommendation is about the changes that should be made to the charter. And then the council would be the entity that would actually enact the ordinance to amend the charter. But they are going to be relying on your work. I know that. So what you're doing here is very important for that purpose. So that's how we'll be going forward with this. And again, we get back to just the question of scheduling. Why don't we just go through this as far as what people have for preferences? If we'd be looking at another meeting, it might be like 3 weeks from now. Brian, do you have any notion about when?
I
Try and
would
do the
leave it up
go-
when the group can get together.
Try and do the doodle thing again like we did last time. And
That was
found
helpful.
a day, one day that worked for all of us, but it worked.
Ron, with summer coming up and everything, is that probably going to be better than for everyone to try and pick a night now? Because, if we're working, you
Yeah.
just never know. I mean, there could be something that
Right.
comes up and, so if you want to do the doodle thing.
Preference is more in the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock time, or mornings? Is mornings ever an option for anyone?
The reason, let me take one step back. The
Yeah.
reason that this kind of got jammed in here underneath the PUC was, one, availability of the city council room. Okay?
Right.
There's always a meeting going on, basically. But then secondly, you had to sign your acceptance of office within 30 days. Because we would have said, oh, let's meet three weeks from now, when people's calendars are typically, lighter, and we could jockey around. But we got jammed into this. It's going to have to be done real soon, and so we said, well, let's try and get it done. So that's how we ended up underneath the PUC on the schedule. And but if I have a doodle, sent out tomorrow, for 3 weeks from now, I suspect it's going to be a whole lot easier. Because I can be more flexible with location, time, and your schedules too.
I would say, the next meeting, we're probably looking at hour and a half. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think once you get past an hour and a half,
Right.
Especially after working if it's a night meeting.
Yeah.
everybody's ready to go home anyway, so.
So anyway, we can approach that, but I guess in general terms, is this late afternoon thing working for most people? As opposed to, I don't know, I'm not hearing anyone yelling that they want to do this at 7 o'clock when people used to do it.
But it's better for me, I can tell you. So I've had a whole night's worth of activities at the plant that need my attention in the morning first thing, so.
Yep.
If everyone else said, hey, I want to do it at 7 in the morning, we don't have that many meetings. I couldn't bend it to make it work, but my
Right.
preference would be for
Okay.
something in the late afternoon.
Okay, let's try and make it work. Somewhere
Okay.
between that 4:30 and 6. I want to just kind of also talk about what Roger said. We're all on equal footing, so I would appreciate that we all look through the charter. If there's anything that doesn't make sense to you, anything that you want to discuss, you certainly can ask for clarification from city staff first, but if you want to bring it, we're charter commission members now, so if there's anything on the charter that you want to talk about, doesn't seem right, this is the place that we can talk about it. If it's just clarification, though, I would ask that you talk to city staff first. But this is where we're going to bring it. I have a few items that I want to talk about.
And
that
I was
want
gonna
to-
ask, do we, I don't get them to the Commissioner Schultz, the chair. Nicole, you'll be the one we get them to that you wanted for discussion on the next
That's what I
meeting?
wanted to end
Well,
with, is
who's-
where do we
who's-
want to bring
Setting the
questions
agenda.
Okay, I
to?
think the real question is who's going to be compiling the agenda? Because if part of the agenda is going to be something like what I roughed out here, a list of possible amendments, do you want something like that?
That's where I want to go with this next part is, who do we get them to? Do we get them to Brian? Do we get them to Nicole? Get them to Lisa?
Well, I mean, we do the agendas for every other board or commission. I don't have a problem with it. You know, if there's, if Roger wants to do it, yay.
That's why I'm asking.
We'll just attach the minutes to it.
But you haven't lost your sense of humor, Brian.
Well, you know, to me, the administrative aspect of putting the agenda together would be no different than, you know, the council meeting.
Right.
If Roger's got something to add, he sends it over, we attach it.
The one thing that is different about this is, this isn't should we buy a new truck for the water department. What we're talking about is changing the charter, and so it's going to be an issue on an area that's of concern to any one of you. It's going to deal with appropriate language that's going to go into it. I think if you see something and you want to get it on, let's call it the agenda, the bullet points to talk to.
Bullet points, yeah.
The one thing would be to be prepared, and if you want to, get something to me in advance, so it's expressed so that everybody really understands what your concern is. Otherwise, we could work through it. I mean, we'll figure it out, but.
Yeah.
So maybe our next meeting will be more some of those discussion points, if any of you have any areas that you do. And I said I have a few that I've just read through it in the last couple of weeks and go, I want to talk about that, and I don't know why we're doing it that way. So. maybe
Well,
we'll-
okay, but, excuse me, Les, but then my question would be, and if there's a lot to go through.
It's not
I mean,
a lot.
okay,
No.
because maybe what we could do is, we've got a list so far. And what we could do would be to see what other additional things would be added onto that.
Yep.
And then just go through it at the next meeting and see how far we get. If we don't get through
Yep,
them
I
all,
agree.
we'll
Have
meet
another- That's what we have
again.
another meeting for.
But why don't we do that? And I guess maybe we should do would be to try and get the next meeting set up. Does 3 weeks sound right to everybody, about
Everybody,
that time
about
frame?
3 weeks, enough time to
Yep.
page
3,
your way
4,
through it?
something like that. And then maybe, a few days in advance of that, if you have something you want on the agenda, to get it to Nicole, so that she could, get that all compiled, so we aren't hitting her up with stuff the day before. And then we'll just go through them.
So maybe if that'll be included in that Google or Doodle poll, that to have any agenda items to you or Lisa or whoever by X day, so everybody know we're all on the same page. And if you have any discussion items, get us.
Well,
them.
the way that program's set up, we'll get the day and time.
Yep.
And then when you confirm that or whatever, then it could be, okay, we're meeting June 10th, get everything to Nicole by June 5th, or, whatever date you want.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah, I think we've got everybody's email, so that shouldn't be a problem.
And it's pretty easy. I mean, in here, you can just, everything's got a section. So to say it's section 17, I want to talk about section 17, and then maybe a little bit more specific about, I don't or I'm confused about this area, or I don't understand that area, or I don't agree with it, or whatever it might be that we have, that you want to talk about. So let's, when we did this last time, one of the areas that we had a discussion about was the mayor could appoint or could terminate or replace the police chief at his will, simply at his will. That's how the charter read. And we were all kind of like, really? You could do that? But that's how the charter read. And we were all kind of like, can't do that. Can't do that. So we had some great discussion about that, and we finally reworded it and said, no, you can't do that. because you just can't do that. So, and that was one thing that was old, just old wording and needed to be changed and cleaned up. So, if you run across something like that, it's like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right to me. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for as you kind of go through that, or something else. So, like I know in the section 22 just talks about the commissions and only lists 3 or 4 commissions when we have 14 other ones that it doesn't talk about. So I'm kind of like, oh, well, why does it only mention those and not the 14 other ones? But, so that was just one little thing that I was like, does it matter? I don't know if it matters, but.
Well, the beauty of it, if it's not in the charter,
Right, that's,
commissions can
Commissions come and go.
They do.
And
right,
change.
so there's some that are important enough that should be in
But
there.
it talks about the Board of Health that hasn't met probably, there's not even a standing Board of Health right now, but yeah, we got commissions that meet all the time. So, I mean, is it a big deal? I don't.
Well, that's
Yes,
what
it
we
is.
got-
They met
that's
6
what we
years
talked
ago.
about at the meeting,
Yeah.
Right,
right?
yep.
Yeah,
It
that's
is.
what we talk about.
I think the last time Board of Health met was when Ben Franklin had an infestation of critters.
But we have like Park and Rec that meets all the time, or the other ones, so it's just kind of like, why is that in there like that? But again, it's old, so. All right,
Could we just have Nicole's email?
yeah, what's
Yeah,
that?
what is your email?
Nicole J. at newulmmn.gov.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, trying to accomplish?
I've got everybody's email that's on this commission. Do you guys, aside from Nicole's, anybody else's, Brian's, or do you have each other's? I mean,
From that email. we
is that
probably-
From the
something we
email,
should
yeah.
share? I mean,
Well, we could get it, we all got it.
Maybe a nice roster of names.
I mean, it just opens up the door of the open meeting law question, since we now are a designated committee.
right.
Again, you can talk to one other person, but you can't be collectively talking to 5 people saying, this is what we're gonna do. you know,
Right,
so-
yet that's a good point.
Yeah,
I
we
should
should
have.
talk
It's an
about
email.
Yeah, we're obligated to transact business at an open meeting. And what that means is, yes, one-on-one communication between individual commissioners is okay. Beyond that, don't do it. And that frankly would include email communications on anything on the merits. If it's a question of, emailing everybody, oh God, I've got my, whatever, I can't be at the next meeting, or can we reschedule it? No. But if it's, my God, do you see what that section says, and we really need to change that? No, you can't be doing that between yourselves. So, anyway, the discussions will happen here at the public meetings.
Okay, any questions? Again?
Yeah, I have a beginner question. Is this, I imagine this is available online
It is available
Oh, yeah.
online,
Yep.
absolutely.
through the city website or something?
Correct.
And when my mother asked me, well, what do you do on the charter commission? Is there anything, the community that we should be, I mean,
Voting?
yeah, or if she says, well, what are you gonna do? Is there anything I can
I think in
look at the charter and
2011,
make
what I told everybody, Mike, was we're cleaning up the books. We're cleaning up the city books. And kind of like what Roger said is this is kind of the basic books of the city, how the city runs. And they get old, and we need to keep them clean and keep them updated, and that's what we've asked, our community to come together as a charter and say, help us clean these up and look at these rules and see if they make sense, and hopefully they all do, and this might go over very well, and it'll be 3 or 4 meetings and we're all done. And maybe there's something that'll be controversial, and who knows, we'll spend a lot of time talking about that. I don't know if there will be. We'll find out. I don't think that there will be.
Sure.
The only thing that was really controversial was that fire department thing last time, and it was a lot of stuff. We got rid of hundreds of pages last time because it was a lot of old stuff.
No,
So-
that would have been on the city code. I don't think you got rid of hundreds of pages. There weren't hundreds of pages in the charter.
Well, if you look at the
Oh, yeah,
city
there
charter,
is.
you'll see there's deleted
Deleted, and
sections.
deleted.
whatnot.
Look at that, a bad word. There's
What we
hundreds
tried
of
to get
pages.
away from was, if the state statute told us how to sell bonds,
That was a
we didn't have to
financial
have
part.
23 pages in our charter telling us how to sell bonds. We just adhered to the state statute. And so there's large sections, and it did drop down dramatically in size and scope. But, you know, it hadn't been done for 30-plus years. And, you know, terms like freeholder or, you know, landholder, well, we don't use those terms anymore. So we brought it up to current standards as far as language. But then we have the typos. We got a few typos in there.
He's and she's and
There's a words, 3 words, and
So to do.
so to do, or to do so. Well, I think to do so sounds better. Roger says so to do. And so don't worry if you see that and read it, don't worry about it. Roger's not done, he don't want to change that.
He's a so-and-so.
They don't have those words in California, I bet. No?
I think,
Does that answer your
Well,
question?
And yeah, we're really like a constitutional convention. I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
you know, that's what we're doing. And for people who weren't on it, the last time this was done was in 2011. And that's when, as Les has described, and Brian, they really kind of cleaned house. So a lot of that work was done.
And
Because
I-
things were very archaic.
And was it
Remember
like
that?
28 years prior to that?
It was a
Or
while,
38
yeah.
years? It was a, so, and nobody wanted to do it. And we're like, we gotta do it, we gotta do it. So again, on behalf of the city council, I thank all of you for stepping up and agreeing to help us with this project, so. And we'll wait for your doodle email in the next day or two, or so.
Lisa will have to do that one. I'm not
Yeah,
done the
yeah.
deal, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So they really want you to close out and then just turn your computer off for those that are new. So you
are
can do
you
that
guys
there.
telling me that you couldn't at least